Good morning, my dear friends and neighbors, once again. It's a delight to welcome you here into my office to have a chat with me one more time. I hope you guys have been having a fantastic week. I hope that everything is falling into place as perfectly as it could be for you. I hope that all of your dreams are being realized, all of your potentials are being utilized, and I hope that you know that you are a beloved child of God in this day, in whatever space it is that you are in, and in every day and every place that you move to throughout the course of your life. I'd like to share with you a few scriptures for this week, and I'm going to depart just slightly from what we did in church this past Sunday. In church on Sunday, we read Psalm number 71, verses 1 through 6. But today, for you who join me via YouTube, I'd like to read Psalm 103, verses 1 through 8. Bless the Lord, O my soul, and all that is within me, bless his holy name. Bless the Lord, O my soul, and do not forget all his benefits, who forgives your iniquity, who heals all your diseases, who redeems your life from the pit, who crowns you with steadfast love and mercy, who satisfies you with good as long as you live, so that your youth is renewed like the eagles. The Lord works vindication and justice for all who are oppressed. He has made known his ways to Moses, his acts to the people of Israel. The Lord is merciful and gracious, slow to anger, and abounding in steadfast love. For our second reading today, I would like to turn to the book of the prophet Jeremiah. Now, I've told everyone who's in church and everyone who takes part in our weekly Bible studies that Jeremiah is my favorite book of the Bible. And part of the reason why Jeremiah is my favorite book of the Bible is this verse, the introduction in which God speaks to Jeremiah and calls Jeremiah to being a prophet. Jeremiah 1, 4 through 10. Now, the word of the Lord came to me, saying, Before I formed you in the womb, I knew you, and before you were born, I consecrated you. I appointed you a prophet to the nations. Then I said, O Lord God, truly I do not know how to speak, for I am only a boy. But the Lord said to me, Do not say, I am only a boy, for you shall go to all to whom I send you, and you shall speak whatever I command you. Do not be afraid of them, for I am with you to deliver you, says the Lord. Then the Lord put out his hand and touched my mouth, and the Lord said to me, Now I have put my words in your mouth. Behold, today I appoint you over nations and over kingdoms, to pluck up and to pull down, to destroy and to overthrow, to build and to plant. Our next reading for this morning will come from the letter to the Hebrews, chapter 12, verses 18 through 29. You have not come to something that can be touched, a blazing fire, and darkness, and gloom, and a tempest, and the sound of a trumpet, and a voice whose words made the hearers beg that not another word be spoken to them. For they could not endure the order that was given, If even an animal touches the mountain, it shall be stoned to death. Indeed, so terrifying was the sight that Moses said, I tremble with fear. But you have come to Mount Zion and to the city of the living God, the heavenly Jerusalem, and to innumerable angels in festal gathering, and to the assembly of the firstborn who are enrolled in heaven, and to God the judge of all, and to the spirits of the righteous made perfect, and to Jesus, the mediator of a new covenant, and to the sprinkled blood that speaks a better word than the blood of Abel. See that you do not refuse the one who is speaking, for if they did not escape when they refused the one who warned them on earth, how much less will we escape if we reject the one who warns us from heaven? At that time his voice shook the earth, but now he has promised, "Yet once more will I shake not only the earth but also the heaven." This phrase, "yet once more," indicates the removal of what is shaken, that is, created things, so that what cannot be shaken may remain. Therefore, since we are receiving a kingdom that cannot be shaken, let us give thanks, by which we offer to God an acceptable worship with reverence and awe. For indeed our God is a consuming fire. And our final reading for this morning, our gospel reading, will come from the Gospel according to Luke, chapter 13, verses 10 through 17. Now, Jesus was teaching in one of the synagogues on the Sabbath. And just then there appeared a woman with a spirit that had crippled her for 18 years. She was bent over and was quite unable to stand up straight. When Jesus saw her, he called her over and said, "Woman, you are set free from your ailment." When he laid his hands on her, immediately she stood up straight and began praising God. But the leader of the synagogue, indignant because Jesus had cured on the Sabbath, kept saying to the crowd, "There are 6 days on which work ought to be done. Come on those days and be cured, and not on the Sabbath day." But the Lord answered him and said, "You hypocrites! Does not each of you on the Sabbath untie his ox or his donkey from the manger and lead it away to give it water? And ought not this woman, a daughter of Abraham, whom Satan bound for 18 long years, be set free from bondage on the Sabbath day?" When he said this, all his opponents were put to shame, and the entire crowd was rejoicing at all the wonderful things that he was doing. Thus ends the reading of God's Word. Thanks be to God. I spoke during church this past Sunday primarily about the passage from Jeremiah, primarily about the call that we all have in our lives, and primarily about how it can be scary, it can be intimidating, it can be difficult to trust. But at some point in our lives, we have to take that leap of faith. Today, I would like to talk about our gospel passage. I would like to talk about Jesus, who is at the synagogue and he's teaching, and yet in the midst of his teaching, he recognizes that there is still more important work to be done. Jesus realizes that there is a woman who needs help that only he can provide. And so Jesus stops what he is doing, interrupts his own lecture, so that he can draw near to this woman and provide her with relief. Now, nothing about this sounds wrong. There are people who would be disappointed because they came to the synagogue to hear a teacher teach, and instead of standing and teaching, the teacher instead abandoned the pulpit and went to minister specifically to one woman. Now the rest of the crowd got to see this happen. The rest of the crowd got to behold a miracle take place in their very midst. But there were some who would surely be upset that things were not progressing the way they had expected when they came to the synagogue that morning. No one expected the leader, the teacher, to leave the place of authority, to wander down through the crowds, and to go to some woman who was bent and stooped and in relatively constant pain. This was not the way that worship happened. This was not the way that services were carried out. This was not normal. The synagogue leaders, after watching Jesus perform this miracle, also stood up and they gave voice to their concern, saying, "This is not the day for this. This is not the time for this." They actually condemned Jesus for showing mercy, for showing love, and for helping someone who was struggling. Now, I'd like to focus on the fact that this woman was not recently stricken with this ailment. This woman was not in perfect health until very recently. This woman was not enduring something brand new that she had never endured before. This woman had endured this same pain, this same affliction, this same malady for 18 years. Now, I've had the opportunity to talk to individuals who have had issues with chronic pain. And while they don't care for it, they don't like it, it is my belief that if somebody were to come to an individual who has issues with chronic pain and to say, "I will heal you tomorrow. You only have to deal with this for one more day," the prevailing idea would be, "I have dealt with this for years. What is one more day?" It would almost seem reasonable. Everything works according to a timeline. The healer operates within certain parameters. And so the woman, had she been given the option, would probably have been happy to wait one more day, knowing that the promise of relief was on the horizon. And this is the attitude that the leaders of the synagogue took. It was simply, God worked for 6 days, but then gave us an example to rest on the Sabbath. Should we not follow God's example? Should we not give ourselves the rest that God gave to God's self? Why then would you try to elevate yourself and say that you can work more, you can work harder, you can work beyond what God did? Why not wait until tomorrow? It's only another day away. This woman will survive one more day of pain. But Jesus said to them, "Should not this daughter of Abraham, should not this faithful Hebrew woman, should not this human being who has been racked with pain for almost 2 decades be shown relief? And should she not be shown relief immediately?" Jesus then used the allusion of livestock. Said, "You will go home after you leave the synagogue, and you will untie your animals from their pens. You will lead them out. You will walk across hill and dale until you find a stream, until you find a river, until you find water. You will labor for the sake of a cow, for the sake of a goat, for the sake of a sheep. Should I not labor for the sake of a human? Should I not labor for one of our very own? Should I not labor for a sister who is in need?" What is the reasoning that she could not be healed? I walked from the pulpit to where she stood. I didn't even cross the entirety of the synagogue. You are prepared to walk perhaps even miles to take care of your livestock. Should I not walk 40 feet to care for this woman? The Bible tells us that the synagogue leaders were put to shame. And that's not terribly important to me. It's not terribly important to put to shame people who are wrong. What is important to me is what else is said in that verse, that the crowds celebrated. That the everyman, that those who gathered to worship, that those who gathered to hear the word, that those who were present saw the rightness in what Jesus was saying. That they saw the fact that there is a God who cares about them and doesn't make them suffer unnecessarily for even one more day. But there is a God who is prepared to heal them then and there. There is a God who is prepared to be at their side then and there. And so we celebrate because we have a God who is present with us. We celebrate because we have a God who is at our side at every moment. John Wesley, the man who founded the United Methodist movement, is reported to, on his deathbed, have said, "Best thing of all, God with us." And today I celebrate that fact. I celebrate that fact because this has been a difficult week. I have found out about many, many people who are ill, many, many people who are hurting, many, many people who are despairing. And to walk with these people, to stand with these people, to talk with these people, it helps me to remember God with us. The best thing of all, God with us. It's easy to fall into pits of despair, into traps of our own making, into the certainty that we are alone. And yet, we have a God who is prepared to be there with us. The moment that we turn to God, the moment that we open our hearts, the moment we open our lives, a God that is prepared to be with us. No matter how much emotional or physical baggage we might be carrying along with us, no matter how poorly we have acted in the past, no matter how far we have fallen from grace, God is prepared to redouble that grace, to extend it all the further, in order that we need not ever walk alone. In order that we need not ever shoulder all the burdens of the world, in order that you and I can dwell in the assurance that we have the best thing of all, God with us. I think as I read this passage about how this woman must have felt, about how she felt, most likely, that she could have waited another day, about how she worried that her infirmity was causing problems for Jesus, about how she worried that Jesus butting heads with the leaders of the synagogue was all her fault, but also how in her moment of need, when she came to the temple, when she came to worship, when she came to hear and to learn and to give praise, she was recognized. She was not dismissed. She was not forgotten about. One of my personal greatest fears is that there might be someone, if I'm being honest, there is someone who feels like they have been forgotten. They have been forgotten by all of their friends. They have been forgotten by all of their family. They have been forgotten by their church. They have been forgotten by God. There are people who feel that way. We have the opportunity and we have the awesome responsibility of carrying the presence of God, of carrying the love, the peace, the joy of God into the world. We have the ability to go to places where people believe that God does not dwell, and to remind them, best thing of all, God with us. God is here. In one of my previous appointments, I held a pub ministry. It was, in essence, a Bible study at the local bar. And the entire reason I did it is because one day I walked into the bar with my family, and somebody said, "Aren't you the pastor?" And I said, "Yeah." And they said, "You can't be here." There's this idea that there are certain places where God does not dwell, that there are certain places that are in God's blind spots. Some people believe the moment we step outside the church, we are in God's blind spot. Some people believe that there are certain locations, certain houses, certain businesses that are in God's blind spot. It's simply not true. God is with us always and everywhere. God is with us even, and perhaps especially, when we feel alone. So that when we open our eyes, when we open our hearts, when we open our spirits, we can recognize that God has been next to us the entire time, prepared for the moment in which we will recognize God, in which we will turn to God, in which we will accept God with us. So today, as I read this passage, I think about what it must have meant to be that woman who was told, "You are important enough, your pain is important enough, your suffering is important enough that we will address it now." I think about what it must have meant to be part of that crowd who got to witness a miracle and got to hear God's people, the beloved creation, all that God has made, is worthy of being tended to and of having their pain alleviated. I think of what it must have meant to those leaders who were trying their best to obey the law, who were trying their best to follow what they had always been taught, who were trying their best to honor God in their own way, who had a brand new opportunity to learn the depth, the length, the breadth, the extent of God's love and mercy. And I think that today, all of us, everyone who watches this video, everyone who ever steps inside a church, everyone who professes that they are a Christian, everyone who professes that they simply want to be a good person, we are all meant to go into the world and to show other people you are valued, you are loved, your pain matters, your suffering matters. We care for you. And so as I read this passage, I reflect on those ways in my life in which I can improve. I reflect on those ways in which I fail to provide sustenance, I fail to provide relief, I fail to provide comfort. And I think that I am called to do better. I am called to be better. In many, many instances throughout many, many years, the church universal has caused a lot of pain to a lot of people. It's popular to say that more people have been killed in the name of God than in any other reason. And while that might be true, it's also true that oftentimes God is merely an excuse. Oftentimes people are prepared to wage some sort of crusade, some sort of war, some sort of campaign, and they will use God as their banner, they will use God as their rallying cry, but instead it's simply the fact that we as humans don't always care like we should, that we as humans are far too often greedy, and hateful. And it is my sincere and earnest belief that the time is long overdue for Christians to reclaim that banner, to reclaim that rallying cry, and to do right with it. And so today I encourage you to let those around you know that they are cared about by you and by God. It is my hope and prayer that every single one of us can take more seriously our goal and our mission to do well by others, to love others just as we have been loved, and to do unto others as we would have them do unto us. We are the recipient of innumerable different mercies, the depth of which we can't even begin to fathom. So let us go into the world and share our own limited mercies with others. Let us all carry the love of God and the wonder of creation in our minds and in our hearts, and let each one of our actions be fueled by the passion to truly be God's people here and now, to make the world a better place, to remind people that they are not forgotten, and to spread the word that each and every person is valued, is beloved, is significant, and is important. That is our call, and we are strengthened for that call by the assurance that we do have the best thing of all, God with us. Thanks to John Wesley for stating that so eloquently, and thanks to John Wesley for giving us that reminder. But thanks above and beyond John Wesley, above and beyond any other person, above and beyond ourselves, to God, for preparing us for what is to come, for giving us the strength to carry such gifts of love, faith, devotion, and passion, and for giving us the call to speak to God's people, to let them know that they are worthy, that they are beloved, that they are wonderful, to let them know that they matter, always and everywhere in each situation. It is part of my own personal testimony that I know what it is to be without hope. I know what it is to feel that I don't matter. I know how devastating it is. And I'm sure that each and every one of you can think of just how devastating it would be to truly believe that you don't matter, to truly believe that no one cares, to truly believe that there is no future and that there is no hope left. All of us, every single person on this earth, is proof that there still is hope. And all of us, every single person on this earth, can carry that hope to others, because sometimes the loads that we have preclude us from holding on to hope. Sometimes the fears that we have prevent us from holding on to hope. Sometimes our experiences have taught us that there is no such thing as hope. So let us carry that hope in abundance, that every time we meet someone along the way who can't carry their own or who won't carry their own, that we have some to spare, some to share, that we have strength to help lift one another up, because that is what we are called to do. That is who we are called to be. Let us all take on the responsibility of speaking the love of God into existence. Let us all take on the responsibility of speaking the hope of Christianity, of love, and of life for all of those who need to hear it. Because each one of us can be a messenger of God's faithfulness, of God's hope, of God's love, and of God's presence. May God give us all the grace and glory to carry those gifts with us. May God give us unending strength that we may not shirk our duties. May God give us eyes to see so that all those whom we come in contact with may be the recipient of what they need. We are all in this together. We are all soldiering through life in the best way that we know how, but we all need one another. And so let us all have the strength, have the conviction, have the devotion, have the attention, and have the love to work together. We're not all in the same boat, but we are all rowing against the same current. We are all trying our best to make our way through a stormy sea that seems bent on destroying us. But through our mutual strength, through what we can share, through the guidance that we can give, we can succeed. We can make life better for ourselves, but most importantly, we can make life better for all of us. And so today, as I read about Jesus, not shirking his duties, as I read about Jesus, not waiting even a moment longer when he knew that he could help, it is my hope and prayer that every single one of us can draw inspiration from this passage, that we can be prepared at a moment's notice to provide the assistance that someone else who is walking their path on this journey through life might need. And may we all dwell in the assurance that not only is God with us, but we are with one another. So in those moments in which our own strength flags or fails, we can rely not only on God to lift us up, but on our brothers and sisters, nearby and far away, to be in our corner, to help to lift us, to give us strength, and to believe in us. Thanks be to God. And thank you, all my brothers and sisters, for your time, for allowing me to join in with you, and for taking this journey with me. It is a delight to be a traveling companion to each and every one of you. I hope that you know that. I hope that you believe that. And I hope to see you again very soon. God bless you all. Have a wonderful week.